And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have a newcomer into the temple, coming to us from Cloud Shore Games, previously developer of Beneath Twisted Earth, now with Festival of Fighters, the one and only Daniel Denehy. I apologize if I got the last name wrong.
Actually, you did pretty well.
And
also, greetings.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming on. I was surprised. I was surprised when I saw you comment on the Valley of the Judge episode for FOF that I did.
Oh no, it was a great episode. Your and your guests' comments were fantastic. They're invaluable, and I had to say thank you because you guys had some great ideas.
Oh yeah. So it is a bit of a tradition around here to open with the humble beginnings. So, with that in mind, I'd like you to walk me through your introduction to TTRPGs and what made it stick.
Oh, okay. So, gonna be lame, because really, what got me into TTRPGs was my wife, then girlfriend, because I had never played one before into like high school, or actually all through high school. Never played it. Like I was aware D&D was a thing. Never tried it. It just wasn't an option. I'm sure somebody was playing D&D somewhere. I just wasn't in those circles. But when we started dating, she talked about how much she liked it, much like how she talked about Harry Potter, and I ended up checking out both of those things. I remember I wanted to try it so that I could talk to her about it. So I went out and I got myself this was back in 3.5 days. So I got myself a D&D for Dummies book, and read through that because for, a newcomer coming to D&D, opening up the rule book for the first time, you have that first knee-jerk reaction where you think, I gotta memorize all this? These 300 some pages? So got intimidated by that. So I checked out the, D&D for Dummies, read through that, ended up finding out that D&D was going on at my high school because I chatted about it with somebody I graduated with, and I ended up sitting through their game. Very terrible first session. And I ended up dying the first session from drinking some, I think it was some dragon breath fire ale or something like that melted me from the inside out. Didn't matter. It was hilarious. But from there, I didn't have anyone else to play with other than that group, and they weren't playing, so I ended up having to DM myself just so I could get games in. And things just kept being very funny at first, enough that it was fun to stick with the hobby. obviously starting in D&D. Eventually I would find myself a regular group, and it was actually a 2E AD&D group, one that they had been running for decades. Um, Same world, different generations, just over the years. I ended up joining them, and that was the first time I really got to experience what an epic experience it could be. Like,
Mhm.
when you get a good campaign going and you actually get invested in what's going on and you have those epic moments, whether for good or bad. And that kind of that just kind of stuck with me, that feeling of experiencing that. I guess you can't call it firsthand, I guess secondhand,
Mhm.
since you got that layer of an avatar. um yeah, I would say that's what really stuck with me. um that got me into the hobby in general. For other RPGs, and especially indie RPGs, um, I got my next experience, like even before that regular group, but while I was still exploring things. I got my next experience after like some 3.5 with straight homebrew games.
Mhm.
And actually, this is relevant to tonight's discussion because the very first one of those I had, flew out to see my girlfriend because she was living across the country at the time. And we ended up playing with her friends out there, and the GM there was running a homebrew Mortal Kombat game. And when he was selling me on it, he talked about how, oh well, with Mortal Kombat, yeah, it's fighting game, but it's got a really rich setting and all these cool stories that they're telling on the sides, and I just thought it'd be a good idea to like role play that out. And uh, funny enough, that ended up sticking with me to this day for, like I said, for Festival of Fighters. Uh, it, it's just kind of funny that was kind of my experience into like the outside of that into other systems.
Mhm.
Um, I don't even remember what he was using. It might have been, I think it was basic. It was probably like a modified D20 system, to be honest. But that was just the days where everything was modified D20. Um,
Yeah,
unless you were into like GURPS and things.
yeah, and I will admit, GURPS is my. I won't say it's my whipping boy per se because Palladium is my whipping boy, but I have poked my fun at some of GURPS's fans for the whole you can run anything in GURPS, which I liken to technically correct is not always the best kind of correct. Uh, because yes, can you do that? Yeah, but you got to go through a lot of legwork in order to get that done. Um, GURPS is more like a programming language than a game, and you have to treat it like that. It is the toolkit
Yeah.
to make the well. Programming language isn't the best analogy. Think of it less like a standalone game, and think of it more like Unreal or Unity or Godot or
Mhm.
Default. You know,
Toolbox.
it's the toolbox to make the game. It is the blue bucket of Legos we all had as kids. Unless you
Mhm.
were stuck with unless you were stuck with Mega Blocks, poor bastards. But the other, but in addition to that, yeah, there were a lot of D20 variants, but I look at that as just house ruling your way into making your own game is nothing new. Um,
Mhm.
that's how um, that's how stuff like Rollmaster became a thing. You know,
Yeah.
Rollmaster was originally a bunch of AD&D house rules, and then just evolved into beyond that. And
Yeah. Well,
it,
even if you look at it, like D&D itself, like D&D came from like two other systems, and came from homebrewing and chainmail, and from Blackmore, which
mhm.
were both things for completely different purposes altogether, and then hybridize those into a new system.
Oh yeah, and with that in mind, I
Hmm.
I ended up bringing this up a bit when when I was covering the game, but where and maybe you answered this in the comment, but when it came to fighting game TTRPGs, were you familiar with a few of them, like Street Fighter or Thrash?
So I didn't mention it in the comment. I'm not familiar with Thrash, but whenever I start a new game, I end up researching multiple games in the genre. Like, so I'll go out and look for some, and then read through those. So like Street Fighter from White Wolf, I read through. I looked at because I'm labeling it as a urban wuxia. I also read some wuxia TTRPGs like Righteous Blades, Ruthless Blood, and there's one long named one. The Tales of the Hold on. I got a copy of it. I don't want to say the wrong game. Let's see here. Martial arts game. Here we go. I looked at Wandering Heroes of the
Of Ogre
Ogre
Gate?
Gate. Yep.
Yep. Oh.
So I looked at that. I looked at Woolaban. I looked at Panic at the Dojo. Panic at the Dojo actually seemed closest to I mean, other than Street Fighter, but Panic at the Dojo seemed closest to what, like, the vibe I was going for. And I am aware of others. Just those are the ones that I ended up reading through before I started.
Yeah.
Before I started putting things together.
Are you at all familiar with the fanzine that Bat Jutsu has been translating?
I am not.
So, Richard Baruster, aka Bat Jutsu, has been translating a Street Fighter fanzine called Warrior's Fist because the game really took off in Brazil, and there's still people doing custom stuff in that fanzine even now.
Okay. I was aware that I was aware of a Brazilian interest in the Street Fighter RPG because I remember coming across, like in my research, coming across some homebrew for KOF fighters for the system.
Oh yeah. And when it now with that in mind, since fighting games are a wide net, obviously, but would it be fair of me to say that the kind of fighting games you are leaning into are more of the 2D than 3D fighters, as kind of your reference point?
So yes and no. So as far as like the game's vibe, and you're gonna hear me say that a lot because number one is the vibe system, but the reason why I named it the vibe system is I go for a type of setting feel. The vibe that I'm going for in this one is really based off of a certain set of fighting games, and not all of those are 2D. So actually, namely, Street Fighter, King of Fighters, Tekken, Bloody Roar, and Dead or Alive are probably the 5 closest to the setting, like, vibe that I'm going for, at least in the core rules. I do intend to come back later to handle the more outlandish stuff, like from Killer Instinct and Guilty Gear and Mortal Kombat. But like for the core rules, those the set, like the tropes and the feel of those settings are more what I'm going for. As for like the actual design, the movement lends itself to like the 2D style, just because it's a range-based movement system. So it just that naturally fits with the lane combat. Now it does work in 3 dimensions, usually when you have groups involved. But if you're doing like a one-on-one fight, that's going to feel a lot like a 2D fighter.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah.
That being said, it not specifically designing it to make it feel like a 2D fighter, more designing it around those settings.
Yeah, I can certainly get that. And there's definitely the vibe of going with ones that are built around these crazy kind of settings, which I saw that quite a bit. You, I do apologize for you having to sit through me ranting about geese for the umpteenth time.
No. That's perfectly fine. They do bring geese back too much.
Um, which
Great villain, but they could bring back. They could definitely bring back other villains more often.
well, I will agree to that to a point, because I never, at any point in my life ever again, want to see Orochi back.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. Honestly, that's not who I was thinking of, though. I would say the Orochi saga is definitely an inspiration.
Well, I could see it. It's just, uh,
Honestly, I was thinking more like Rugal. I think they could have stood to bring him back into their stories more often. I mean, for how often they bring back geese.
at the very least, they haven't tried to actually bring him back to life.
Yeah.
Anytime he's shown up, it's a nightmare match, i.e., Geese is such a generational hater that his spirit keeps haunting people.
Yeah. Or at least bring back, instead of bringing back geese or bringing back Rugal, they could bring back somebody else in their place. Like Rugal's son was a perfect setup for that, but then they just dropped him after like his one appearance.
Yeah.
Sorry, getting off topic.
Yeah, but I think one of the interesting things that we have here is building around a set of archetypes. Since one of the tricky things, and you probably saw this looking through Street Fighter, is building the fighting style in the way games were done in the 90s leads to a lot of fiddly.
Yeah. I
'Cause
have some comment on that. But it sounded like you have more of a point to make.
yeah, instead what we have here is built more around archetypes, and the archetypes that I saw reminded me a lot more of 2D than 3D fighters.
Fair. I can see that. I mean so I mentioned I did research at the beginning. Obviously, in addition to doing research into the TTRPGs, I also did research into fighting game tropes. We'll call it tropes. Like the archetypes. Like one of the biggest problem I find with the archetypes is nobody agrees on what an actual archetype is. I mean, beyond your Shoto and your Rushdown, and your Grappler and your Zoner. Like beyond those four, like everything, and okay, Charge. Beyond those five, everything gets really murky in how people define them. And I can see what you mean with 2D over 3D, because admittedly, though you get some of those archetypes in, like say Tekken, it's not 1-to-1 because the way their combos are designed are just completely different. So the actual like mechanics of how the fighters are doing all of their special moves are just different. So they're not going to translate 1-to-1. But I figured with I figured that's still a good basis to work with, because I definitely I didn't like how the Street Fighter RPG did it, where they were trying to recreate specific martial arts. That was definitely a route I didn't want to go down.
That, and they were still building around the storyteller system, which is heavily dependent on the whole attribute and skill setup that was common around that time.
Right. So I thought that, well, I knew I wanted to make a system where players were going to be constructing their fighting system. They were going to make something unique to themselves, and then if they wanted to call that Muay Thai or call that Kung Fu, then they can. But at the same time, with the way that I designed the system, with having the archetypes encouraging a certain style of play, and then you also tacking on your techniques to kind of customize how your fighting style is made. That doesn't have to be just traditional martial arts. That could also be, you know, a wild man wildly flailing, or in my playtest, I had a guy who wanted to make Leon Kennedy, who was doing gun kata in the ring, uh, and that's fine. Um, I won. One of the things I realized was for the fighter construction system after the playtest or after my personal playtests, was I needed to include on the character sheet um, a space for the player to name their fighting style. Because that's also thematic to, like, say, Street Fighter, because Street Fighter and King of Fighters did that too, where you'll have unique named fighting styles, not just for, like, such and such Ninja Clan fighting style, but like oh what's Ken's student, uh Justin, no, from Third Strike. Uh,
It's been a while since Third Strike.
I'm blanking. Well, anyway, his my point for him is, like, his fighting style is imitating Ken.
Mhm.
Like, he doesn't actually learn Ken's fighting style. He's just imitating Ken. Uh, or even like Terry Bogard,
Mhm.
huge character. He doesn't have a formalized fighting style. In fact, I'm pretty sure, like, his fighting style is called, like, generic martial arts. Or, like, not literally generic martial arts, but martial arts. Because it doesn't have to be a specific martial art. It could just be something that you name for your character, and if you want to make that flavored to, say, like, your background sect, or if you want to make it just frying pan jutsu, fair enough. That's perfectly fine. The system supports that. You'll be able to construct your fighting style with the components available, and then skin it however you like.
Mhm. Yeah, I can I can certainly get that, especially since think of how many different wide varieties of like kung fu that exist. I think there's
Hmm.
like 1,500 different variants of kung fu,
Oh yeah.
and then you look at the different variants of other martial arts styles, and it you would end up dealing with a Sisyphusian task.
Yeah. Well, also, and I'm glad this topic comes up, because I was hoping we get to talk about this. Like, you and I have previously spoken, like, in preparation for this call, about design principles. And one of mine, for sure, one of my design principles for all of my games, is something that I call approximation over simulation. Um, simulation, simulation, is kind of, I feel like, is a pitfall for RPGs, where you,
It very much is and was, especially in the 90s.
yes, absolutely, 1,000%, and yeah, you definitely see that in Street Fighter. Like, okay, so it's great. I understand the allure of it. You want to build immersion by having it feel accurate, right? But that's also a trap, because you can end up over codifying things and really just overcomplicating and slowing things down. And actually, it can end up being a horseshoe effect, where you design it to be so accurate to the thing you're trying to simulate that you end up going straight past immersion for the player, right back into being disassociated, because they're looking at half a rule book of rules for something that, for them, they just want to get to rolling some dice.
Yeah.
um, so something I aim for is to approximate, to filter that down to, like anytime I look at a mechanic, I look at how I want it to feel, like what I want it to represent, how, like, what is it thematically representing, how should it feel, and then incorporating a mechanic, specifically a simple and straightforward mechanic that represents that in some way. It might not represent it completely, but so long as it would give the player that that initial feel, or that partial feel, if nothing else, um, enough that they roll in. Oh, that's kind of cool. It's kind of like, it's kind of like what I was going for. That's enough, because if you end up doing too much, you just build on your cognitive load of your players, and they're gonna start getting bored from things slowing down and not being able to remember stuff. It's much better for them to get a cool spark of, oh, that's cool, and move on, because then they're going to keep coming back to that spark each time.
Yeah. Oh, and like I said, a lot of games in the early '90s were guilty of that simulation thing.
Yeah.
This is the reason why games like Phoenix Command have been in the list of "I will never run this again."
Hmm.
Or
Oh, is that the spaceship one?
no, Phoenix Command was a milsim one from the early '90s. It was used as the basis for the Aliens Adventure game, the first attempt at doing Alien in TTRPG form.
Hmm.
Obviously, the second one is what we got from Free League, which was great, but
Hmm.
the original one was a mess. Aliens Adventure game was all of those bad traits, and this is also one of the many reasons why Palladium has been my whipping boy for most of my life. uh, because they definitely want, and a lot of them really wanted to do this whole thing of having a skill for just about everything.
Yeah.
I'd also, and even though it's board games, I'd also be remiss if I didn't bring up the infamous monster board games from the '70s. Like, you've probably seen the campaign from North Africa and probably recoiled in horror at
Yeah.
the size of that game. I have never I've never finished that game because inevitably someone starts an argument with it. Uh,
I have never even dreamed of attempting to play that game.
have
But
you
as far
seen
as I'm concerned,
have you seen the photo of some kid laying next to the board for size comparison?
I have not seen that, but I do believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I watched a video that went into in depth about what that was like because I was curious. But way too much. But I mean, at that point, if you look at the design principles of that guy, it made sense because he was proving a point.
Yeah,
He was going for accuracy for the sake of accuracy, or at least detail for the sake of detail.
and there were a lot of attempts to try and recreate historical battles in the wargaming scene of the '70s. So it is very much a
Yeah.
product of its time, and the monster board game thing didn't last much longer.
Mhm.
Probably because people were buying them more as novelties than things that actually would get play. And when something takes 1,000 hours to play, I think we've crossed a certain threshold.
You're really only going to play it once, maybe twice.
Mm-hmm.
No, I
And
understand that.
mm-hmm.
I actually had a. This is board games. We're still off topic, but have you ever heard of the Zombies board game, like with 3 exclamation points?
Yeah,
Tile-based game. Great game. Love it. It was one of the games where I learned the mistake of overexpanding something. Because I ended up, that was one of the games where I would get every single expansion. Loved it. Loved combining it. Loved playing combined games. Fantastic. But then I run them all at once at a con. Like combining everything into one gigantic set spread across several tables. At the end of the fun game, interesting how it turned out. But by the end of that, break all that down. Nothing's in the right box anymore. I'm never playing this again because I don't even know.
It's been sorted out too.
yeah, I can certainly get that. And with that kind of thing in mind, I remember one of the interesting things that FOF is doing was implementing the difference between damage and combo. So the latter part, I've seen some folks attempt it, but not go all the way with it. So, what gave the idea for doing that? You alive? You there, man? Hold on a moment, folks.
I lost you. Ah, okay, there you are.
Yeah. So where did I cut off?
Actually, I didn't hear you respond. Last thing I said was about over codifying things and
Yeah.
forcing your GM to memorize everything.
Yeah, I did hear that part. The next question I was asking was on the concept of the combo part of combat.
Mm-hmm. In how I implemented it, or like in general?
Just where the idea came from, where the idea to do that came from, and how you came to that implementation.
Okay. Well, it's going to sound like I cheated, because I did. So I call my system the vibe system, because I try and make vibes, and I tried to design a flexible system that could accommodate any vibe by building on it properly. That includes the how attacks work, and the combat in Festival of Fighters fundamentally works the same way as it does in my other games. So including Beneath Twisted Earth and There Is No Outside. The way, like the mechanism for making an attack functionally runs the same. And it lent itself naturally towards a combo-based system, in that essentially if you break down an attack from one character to another, you end up getting basic mechanics or features of that attack to play around with. You get your to hit score, you get your damage, you get your number of attacks, and you get what range you can make that attack at. Now in the other systems, they also have ammunition, but I completely eliminated that for this because we're dealing with martial arts, and frankly, even if somebody does end up using a gun or a bow or something, it doesn't really matter because it's just part of their style. But the number of attacks is something that I incorporated for the other systems as well, where the range of attacks you could have from a single attack action would range from 1 to, in some cases, 4, depending upon how fast that type of attack is supposed to feel. Or that. Like, for example, in those other systems, if you equated it to guns, a pistol might have 1 or 2 attacks in an attack action, whereas a semi-automatic, like a machine gun, would have 3. Now, usually when you end up having that, you adjust the damage accordingly, so high number of attacks, low amount of damage, to adjust to kind of balance that out. But again, that lent itself naturally in the same way that the movement style did towards a fighting game style, because you're already working on building combos. Now, I think some other games did some very interesting. They treated attacks in very interesting ways. Like what comes to mind is Panic at the Dojo, where they equate everything to action points, and being able to generate combos based upon the number of action points you can pour into it Like that's very interesting, and I think that's a great approach to going about it. For me, though, I already had a ready-built system that already works with number of attacks in a round. So I was going to stick with that for another design principle, which I'll touch on in a second. But also because having just the number of attacks in an attack action allows you to play with that through the various optional mechanics. So what I mean by that is I designed both BTE and Festival of Fighters for customization from the player, where you could apply different features, or rather abilities, to your core combat. So in like Beneath Twisted Earth, you can apply weapons mods to your weapon systems, which could adjust it this way or that way, and that also has optimizations in it. But in Festival of Fighters, you can add techniques. And having those five there, but 4 features to an attack here allowed you to tweak that. So with the archetypes, your player is able to choose, how they would like to tweak things, like with the rushdown, where if you get all your hits in, you can get a 4th hit, or with some of the techniques, you can adjust your stance skill, or not your stance skill, but your stance features, like number of attacks, or the amount of damage that you're doing, or the range that you're doing. It works well as gears that, or maybe as gears. It works well as gears that the player then is equipped to be able to twist and turn to how they prefer it for their style. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Which that's really what I was aiming for across them for the Vibes system. I mentioned another design principle that I have, and I'm using the Vibe system across multiple games, and that's very much on purpose. One of the so the Vibe system was inspired largely by Fantasy Flight Games' Warhammer 40k system. I don't know if they ever actually formally named that system.
They never did. On the other hand, the predecessor that was in Fantasy was never outright named as far as the system. It was just a D100 system.
Right, but it was very much inspired from that in 2 ways. One, percentile system and more open-ended advancement. But 2, and the thing that I really wanted to replicate in my games was that using the same system across the games in such a way so that every time your table decided to try another game that's in the Vibe system, you're essentially getting more to the toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
They're compatible, and you could conceivably take 2 games and then run a new campaign that pulls from both of them.
I see where you're going with that, and I remember with the FFG run of 40k roleplay, there were notes about how to bring say characters from Dark Heresy to Rogue Trader, or Rogue Trader to Death Watch. Though it was tricky because there wasn't a unified rank setup, and I feel like that's something that
power level was a thing.
Well, it was a case where I think a rank 1 character in Rogue Trader was equivalent to a rank 4 character in Dark Heresy, and so on. And I think that's why the tier system was introduced in Wrath and Glory, to more easily allow for that kind of crossover. But
it also makes sense for that setting, especially if you're going to be going on adventures and you're going to have somebody who inevitably wants to play a Space Marine. Really, whenever you Whenever you incorporate Space Marines in that setting, is when you have power scale issues.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, but anyway, so yeah, that is one thing I try and aim for also with my games, and that is consistent for a Festival of Fighters. So I build off of the core vibe system. Now I'll change things around. For example, in stance attacks and Festival of Fighters, I dropped ammunition entirely because that doesn't really make sense for martial arts, right? So I understand that somebody might want to build that a gun kata character and want to use guns. Sure, fine. It doesn't really matter if that character is using guns because ammunition doesn't really make sense for the theme of the game. And that's fine. That just means like if you were going to incorporate the rules from Festival of Fighters and have like a fighter character appear in one of the other games, that either the GM would have to pick and choose which version they want to use, or alternatively, you have a pre-built system that works for that type of character that is compatible with the other campaign. So you just let that character run like a character from that game in the other game.
Yeah.
Now
when you coined it the vibe system.
Yes.
Did anyone point out how that might be a bit downstream from the groove mechanic that was in Capcom versus SNK 2?
So I remember when you said that in your read through of it. So short answer, no. And honestly, that never occurred to me until you said that, and that worked out. I was very surprised when I started developing the mechanics for a fighting game RPG, and how well it kind of slotted in to some of the pre-existing design decisions for a vibe system. Just some I don't think synchronicity is the right word. Just
convergent creativity.
Well. Sure, that works.
That's the term that I often use. And I am curious if with the way you're describing the vibe system, is Beneath Twisted Earth retroactively now part of that family, or is that still its own beast?
So part of the family, yes, absolutely. They are fully compatible with each other. There are some differences. Like, for example, there's a rule in Beneath Twisted Earth that talks about on foot versus mech, or what's called human scale versus massive scale combat. For example, your movement rate in Festival of Fighters, you can move usually between 2 and 4 ranges, depending upon how high your body stat is. Mm-hmm. But if you were to apply a Festival of Fighters character to a mech combat in Beneath Twisted Earth, the massive scale would reduce that fighter down to only being able to move 1 range at a time, because you're dealing with massive scale ranges. So they just could not cover the physical space that a mech could in a single turn. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they are compatible, and I would say they're part of the same family. Mm-hmm. In fact, to the point that my playtesters from my personal playtest, who also ran in a BTE campaign, they expressed interest in, once Festival of Fighters is finished out, starting a new campaign where they make fighters using Festival of Fighters, then incorporate the mech piloting. And make kind of like a Xenogears sort of.
They're making Technomancer. Let's not beat around the bush. They're making Technomancer and
or G Gundam.
G Gundam, that'd be too easy to invoke, because everybody's gonna invoke that. I'm invoking Technomancer and Virtual On.
Yeah, Virtual On. Yeah, but yeah, definitely, and I love that. Mm-hmm. I love the idea that any player of one of my games can pick one game and decide to check out another game, and they're like, oh, I like that. Either I want to take characters into that, or I just want to take this one mechanic and just import it over to my campaign over here. And I love that compatibility, and that is one of my design principles, and why I stick with my vibe system is because for all of the esoteric vibes I have explored so far, and I intend to explore, I want them to feel compatible. Like every new one you check out is like an expansion to your existing game.
Oh yeah. And what's funny about that is when I was doing one of my streams on Sunday, there was a joke made about adapting certain wrestlers into my system. I had said not, and they were Brother A was thinking, oh, why don't you adapt the Undertaker into the system? I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. That's too easy. If I'm gonna go with a wrestling reference, I'm going with Muda. I'm going with the Great Muda because I love puro res.
It's funny you say that, because I'm intending to make an Undertaker reference in mine. So, I intend to have pre-made fighters for players who just want to have something pre-built, or probably more ideally have pre-built higher level opponents for going into a tournament. And I knew for grappler I had to do a pro wrestler, right? And in my research, like the most used trope I think for a pro wrestler is Hulk Hogan in like fighting games. And I'm like, okay, I get it. He was really popular in the 90s. Sure. Where's my Undertaker though?
Yeah.
Although where's my tombstone?
I would, although as far as wrestling references in video games, it's I'm trying to think of how many would actually lean more into Hulk Hogan, because I can't think of too many.
Well, you got in DOA you have
okay, with DOA you've got Bass. I can go
Bass,
with that. That definitely feels like Hollywood Hulk Hogan. But say Street Fighter, Zangief certainly doesn't fit that bill.
Not in Street Fighter. Though I guess maybe you could argue Alex kind of a little. But that's trying to make it fit.
That is Reed Richards getting drawn in quartered levels of stretching, I think.
I know that there was more than one example. I think I came across it like 2 or 3 times, and that's why I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do Undertaker. I was like it more.
I'm not sure if this is actually the case, but with Wolf Hawkfield in Virtua Fighter, I see more of the Road Warriors, who were really, really big in Japan. And there was that game on the SNES, Saturday Night Slam Masters, that was basically one giant spot the reference with the entire roster. Also had the guy behind Fist of the North Star handling character designs. Which is the most random fact ever, but it's like a lot of the roster in that was one giant nod to early 90s WCW, including referencing the infamous Black Scorpion experiment. Where they're going to have this mystery character that they were going to unveil. But they didn't. But they created the character before they figured out who the mystery person was going to be, and then they had like 3 people who could have done it, but but all of them didn't work.
Stuff like that happens all the time in wrestling, but admittedly, I'm not familiar with that one because I was more of a WWF.
Yeah, and I was more of ECW when I could watch it, and New Japan and All Japan when I could get tapes.
Oh, that one Mick Foley would be really good.
Sorry,
sidetrack.
And of course, when it is pointed out Alex was based off Hulk Hogan, though his Street Fighter 6 appearance is well, they had Kenny Omega do the mocap for it, and use his moves.
Well, honestly, it looked great. I
Mhm.
saw the video that they did advertising that, and I can see why they picked him. It
Well,
worked perfect.
he's a massive Capcom nerd in general.
Yeah.
And just a video game nerd as a whole. As if his finisher being called the One-Winged Angel wasn't a big enough giveaway. But like I think when it came to when it comes to King in Tekken, I honestly think that was meant to be a nod to Tiger Mask.
Yeah, 1000%.
And Armor King being a nod to Black Tiger, which was what when Eddie Guerrero wrestled under a mask, that was the identity he had. He's one of the Black Tiger is one of those identities that's gotten passed around by a bunch of people. And I'd say Marduk in Tekken is more. I always got Goldberg vibes from him.
Okay. Sure. I can see where you're coming from. Marduk's weird.
Yeah. Though I can always break out King if I want to extract maximum salt. Especially with some of those grapple combos that he swear you're just in the thing for like 15 seconds and there's nothing you can do about it.
Absolutely.
But it is funny you bring up the weapons thing, because there have been characters with weapons in different fighters. Some of them incorporate them as part of their particular shtick.
Who's the character in Strive right now?
Well, everybody in Strive.
Several characters in Strive, but
some kind of weapon. But I suppose an early example would be Vega. Who obviously isn't called Vega in Japan because of that whole thing that's been made fun of many times.
I'm trying to think. There's a specific character in Strive right now that I was thinking of. Oh, that's it. Elfelt. Valentine?
Yeah.
Because she has the rifle.
Yeah, Elfelt and also Noelle in Blaze Blue.
Yep. But yeah, and if you look at it in the context of the fighting game, of the mechanics of the fighting game, I should say, it doesn't really matter that they're using a weapon versus, say Jam, who's going in with a leg-based kicking attacks. You're still doing just damage, and for a fighting game, that makes perfect sense. It's just a type of attack, and now I'm fully intending to. I'll pay lip service to it, where how can you have characters using guns with characters who are using fists? Oh, well, they're that skilled and that tough that they can, either take just grazing blows or just grit through it. But I mean, the real answer is thematically, it doesn't matter. Thematically, it's just an attack. It's just their style.
Yeah. Like I remember when I tried out Fantasy Strike, which incidentally is a very good teaching tool when it comes to fighting games. And that obviously has Jaina using a bow and arrow. But her fighting style is all about just having this big variety of projectiles. Essentially, she's the type for people who really love abusing ranged attacks, because her whole thing is trying to turn the arena into an obstacle course.
What was that called? I do play with that some in the next version of the playtest that's coming. Actually, no. Actually, I think it's available right now. Since the version that you read, I had put out another version of the playtest that added two more fighter archetypes, uh, but specifically special archetypes. One of which being a trapper,
Mhm.
uh, which is specifically designed and just like in like 2D fighting games around controlling your battlefield from making your opponent having to work around you blocking or you negatively incentivizing certain directions.
Yeah, a frame trap.
Yes.
Uh, which there's certainly been those characters. Um, and I do remember you mentioning that some of the things I had said in that episode of Valley of the Judge may have had an effect on future developments.
You
But
guys did
I
have
don't
some great ideas.
Yeah, but I don't think you went into too much detail in in the comment you had left.
I did not, because the initial comment was really just a thank you and to confirm, because you had mentioned that you thought that it was really just a playtest of core rules, um, and that there was more to come. And yeah, you were 1,000% right. And I know like one of your guests had expressed that they wanted to wait and see where it went if it was going to expand. And yeah, you were 1,000% right. I for a fighting game system, the most important thing was going to be the combat system and character creation.
Yeah,
So that's what I wanted to play test first in the alpha. So that I could have done a much better job explaining that. And for the next version of the playtest, I intend to have a playtest introduction specifically explaining better, what players are going to be looking at. Uh, so yeah, that was completely fair of you guys, and yeah, I just wanted to confirm that.
yeah.
Yeah, that those were core rules that I wanted to test out.
Which is what I figured. What I saw in that was a vertical slice.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't even call it a vertical slice because it didn't incorporate any of the more adventuring content that I
Which
intend to include.
which I think is I'd imagine that's going to be a natural next step, and I also imagine a big part of that is going to be uh, putting. It's inevitable that you put in some sort of mini adventure, the like of either an exhibition, tournament, or something like that, that's because no, embrace the tropes.
No, you're 1,000% right. I do intend to include a starting adventure, though I think currently my ideas for it are uh, like an exhibition, some exhibition fighting, with the pretense that like fighters are gathering for a tournament in a city. But I actually thought for that starting adventure that it would draw more inspiration from uh, actually more like Final Fight and Streets of Rage, where the fighters get pulled into having to deal with like a gang, and essentially giving them the chance to fight through some mooks, you know, get some experience before they actually enter into that fight, but also play around with weaker enemies and play around with the combat system. I have a really good idea or really thematic idea for ending that with like a fight against some mini boss in uh, it, either one of two things, either like a Pow Pow Cafe or like a Vanilla Ice nightclub, you know, from Ninja Turtles, like the Go Ninja Go, uh, where they just crash into some place in the middle of their fight, and instead of people panicking and running around, instead they're all for it and they're hyped, and just have like a band playing in the background to their fight, because that's just such peak like 90s. um
Oh
I'm
yeah,
undecided the specifics for it, but yeah, definitely like a starting adventure for that, that could then lead into a campaign that they could play with.
yeah. What equally comes to mind just as much is as I mentioned as I mentioned before, grabbing a few notes from the tea house scene in Hard Boiled, even if that was using firearms. Just some sort of tea house or restaurant that's just completely getting trashed.
Yeah, I can see it. And honestly, yeah, that makes sense for a wuxia too. Lots of fights happen in the inns, which I also appreciated
Surprise,
some of your
motherfucker.
comments from the wuxia side of things too. For example, like having to have a beggar sect, because yes, I had to have a beggar sect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know you're not trying to replicate individual fighting styles, but do you plan on putting in a guide of a rough equivalent for different ones? Like, if someone wants to,
Are you thinking of Drunken Master?
That's one angle of if somebody wants to do a particular fighting style that they've seen, whether it be Savate or Capoeira or the like, what the archetypes that would be rough equivalents or close enoughs to that particular approach might be. Not outright directing, but just suggestions.
So, what I'm more likely to do, and what I did include, because Capoeira and Drunken Master were both very top of mind. What I did was actually have multiple techniques that could combine to replicate that sort of style. So, for example, if you, let's say you build yourself a sure, why not? Let's say you build yourself a rushdown, but you still want to play a Drunken Master. I wouldn't call Jamie a rushdown, but pretty aggressive play. So you could then take your rushdown stance and start learning techniques such as, and actually here I have the book pulled up. Why don't I actually look at the examples? Let's see. Techniques. That would be under combat techniques. So, for example, okay. So, drunken defense would be one that you could take, where essentially talks about how you drunkenly sway in combat, which allows you to take glancing blows from your opponent's attacks, having a damage reduction. You could take drunken rebound. The fighter drunkenly stumbles around the battlefield to avoid blows and to build momentum, thus increasing your own damage if you dodged an attack. Or or that could apply to both capoeira and drunken boxing. Unpredictable movement. If your fighter moves before attacking, reactions against their attacks have a penalty. So essentially, the options are there for you to be able to build your idea that to make it feel more like that. So like you can have your core, just your rush down, archetype stance with all the buffs that come from archetype or from the archetype, and skin it towards your preferred martial arts style. But then you go into the techniques, you can start tweaking it to make it feel even more like what you're going for. Or, and if you don't find anything in the techniques that fits quite what you're going for, I would highly encourage GMs to work with their players and just come up with something that feels like what they want. Make it a technique. I would. That's definitely something that I highly recommend. Rule 0, homebrew. Come up with your own stuff. I try and include rules for that. I don't have a lot of rules for techniques, though I might include that under the GM toolbox section. But like, for example, with adversaries for enemies, I do include rules. And you can see this in Beneath Twisted Earth and some of the other systems. But for Festival of Fighters, I am going to include recommendations for if you are statting out a adversary. Like if you're building a stat block, advice for the GM on how to balance it and like where they want to put their stats and such.
Yeah, I can get that. And with that in mind, has there been anything within Festival of Fighters that you had experimented with, but ultimately it had to get dropped because it either didn't fit where the direction was going or just didn't work out as planned?
Good question. Um, well, I mean, we are still in alpha, so we still might see that. But one thing that does come to mind, kind of going back to that read-through video again. The comments that you guys made about the hypermeter were 1,000% fair. Where specifically that the building up your meter all the way and unleashing that in a single strike did not feel worth it. So actually, let me pop over to that section so I can speak about that and pop over to hypermeter. So specifically with the I'm looking at the popped up one. So in the version that you guys read through, there was the hyper mode and the what did I call it? A hyper attack in that version. Sorry, I've done a lot of rewriting of that section. All right. Well, either way, point being, it was set up to where you could either go into a hyper mode where you got armor points, temporary armor points, as well as a damage boost for a number of rounds for the battle charges that you built up. Or if you built it up all the way, you can get essentially a free critical, which is just max damage. Which, for how much battle charges you had to build up, that felt underwhelming, and you guys were 1,000% right about that. I've since reworked that to where number one, their hypermeter now has levels and is based on 3 levels of 3 charges. So as you build up your hypermeter now, you can expend individual meters or multiple meters at a time, or still enter hyper mode for the amount of charges that you have for a limited period of time based upon how many charges you have. And instead of it being just a free critical, now you're increasing the total number of dice for your attack. So if you do a d6 and you turn in 1 meter, now you're going to be throwing 2d6 for damage, or you could build that up to +3.
Mm-hmm.
So I agreed that it felt underwhelming, and I wanted to try it with I wanted to give the player more options in number one, how often they could use it. Having to build up to 10 and then use it in one go, yeah, that definitely didn't felt underwhelming. Took too long to build up. And in fact, in my playtesting, they never used it. They only used the hyper mode. Breaking that down into 3 levels makes it a lot more usable. Because number one, you might not want to build it all the way up for that really big attack. You might need that. You might need a slightly bigger attack right now. So having the option, and honestly, I'm all for giving the players more options to let them make strategic decisions, feels better. I think, and I think that's definitely an example of where I went in the wrong direction there. It just wasn't working out. And,
if I had to guess, I think it was a case of being a little bit too slavish to the source materials.
Mm-hmm.
Since a lot of them will have that kind of thing where you're building it up and using the whole meter and just starting from scratch.
Yeah, that, and I think it was a case of where I was oversimplifying. Like, I try and aim for simple, straightforward mechanics so as not to increase cognitive load on the player. But that was a case where I think I had oversimplified to the point that the solution, it just felt underwhelming. I mean, crits work great and they're rare, but a free crit for that much wasn't enough. Now, preferably, now you could see it, like if you get the opportunity to build all that up, getting a big payoff for it. Because essentially, you can either do one big blowout, or I have it now where you can spend that on individual strikes. So rather than doing one big like hyper finish where you do all of it at once, you can instead apply a meter to each combo strike, getting a hyper combo out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can certainly get that. So with that in mind, what are some of the plans coming next for Festival of Fighters?
Sure. What I'm working on for this next playtest, I already mentioned some changes to the hypermeter. I am experimenting a little bit more with the base vibe system for Festival of Fighters as far as the will points. One of the I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this. One of the perceptions of the will points was that players had to be broken in on using them, because they have rolling penalties. New players don't want to use them because they're too afraid of that stacking penalty. In the system, especially like so for in it works fine in Beneath Twisted Earth, because in that, I mean, combat will still be quick here, but combat there is quick and deadly, and players, especially new players, end up relying on their will points a lot, and essentially they end up gambling on their combats, where they're deciding, okay, when am I going all in? When am I just shoving everything I have at it? But even then, for Festival of Fighters, I wanted the will points to synergize with the hypermeter, where when you used a will point, so one change I decided to make there was that they're essentially, instead of it being you getting a penalty for every single point you use, instead it's going to be you get a penalty for every 3 that you use. So on average, most players, they're going to start with like 5 to 6 will points. So if they end up spending all of them, the penalty is going to be bigger, but they're not going to get a penalty until they've used at least 3. So they'll feel a lot safer to use will points. There will still be risk versus reward, because as soon as I've used 2 will points and I really want this to hit, but now it's going to be a -5 to all of my rolls. Or if they're surviving a -5 and they're in the boss fight, and I really need this to hit, but can I take him out now, or can I survive with a -10 to all rolls? I think that's going to end up working better. And I am okay with, even though technically will points is part of like the core vibe system, changing that up for Festival of Fighters. I'm fine with that, because even though they are compatible still, it's just a case where if a GM were, say, going to pull from both, they would end up choosing, okay, which version of will points do I prefer, or which are going to work better for my campaign. So that's one change. Will points are going to be adjusted so that players are incentivized to use them more, to help synergize with their hypermeter. I incorporated more team attacks. One of the things that you guys had mentioned was nothing really in the game for team abilities. Specifically, you guys were talking about tag or tag attacks and such, and that was kind of something that I wasn't sure how I wanted to approach yet. So I kind of loosely put it in like the box for the expansion later. But in revisiting that I kind of already started it. There was the one reaction where you could protect one of your allies from an attack. So it really, the start was already there, but what it needed was that needed expanding. So I went full in on incorporating some tag mechanics. Specifically, there's team combos you could do now in a team attack. There is a new type of reaction where you can expend your reaction to assist your an ally's attack. And in addition to that, there's also a new type of tech or a new set of techniques that are specifically tag techniques, where if both fighters take that technique, they get this mutual benefit. Whether that is adjusting one of those existing team attack actions, say they take the assist action and they can swap places, as an example, or a new type of team attack that they can do together, such as like a joint key attack that does like an area of effect damage. So new tag attacks being added, or sorry, tag attack, new tag techniques being added to the techniques section. New team coordinating actions and reactions. For the next playtest, I've been working on a set of adversaries, specifically what I'm referring to as minions. So, as I envision it for the final game, there's going to be two different tiers of enemies. There's going to be what I'm referring to as minions, which are your stat blocked enemies that you can fight. That even when they get up to like that boss tier, they're always going to be easier for a group of fighters to take out. And then on a higher tier to that will be properly statted out fighters and then boss fighters. Those are going to be pre-built enemies, or what I call adversaries, that are going to use the same rules as player fighters. Something that won't be in this next playtest, but I do intend in the final version, are boss mode rules, specifically when you are taking on a boss fighter. Rules that are going to accommodate for an entire group of player fighters taking on a single boss and leveling the playfield and just making that boss Rugal scary.
Yep.
One system that I did research for that did that really well was Panic at the Dojo, and I wanted to incorporate something similar to the final version of it. That's not going to be in this next playtest, but that is something I am working on. In this next playtest, there will be minion adversaries from like starting mooks to sub bosses, or like boss level minions, but what I would consider like a sub boss compared to like a boss fighter. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
definitely in the next playtest, tag fighting, new techniques, updated hypermeter and will points, 2 new archetypes, and the adversaries. Which that should give GMs a lot to play with and start testing it in more complex scenarios.
Yeah, I can certainly get that. But with that said, I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my monastery and enjoy the madness that happens here.
No, thank you. I had a great time.
And anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open to you. As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged.
Yeah, I think next time I'll bring beer.
And, of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there will be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody!